In the first chapter of the Republic by Plato, the allegory of the cave is presented as a way to explain the nature of reality and the process of gaining knowledge. The allegory is set in a cave where prisoners are chained and can only see the shadows of objects passing by on the wall in front of them. The prisoners believe that the shadows are the only reality and that the objects themselves are not real. However, one of the prisoners is freed and is able to leave the cave and see the real objects in the light of the sun. He is then able to understand the true nature of reality and the difference between the shadows and the real objects. The allegory is used to explain the process of gaining knowledge and understanding the true nature of reality. It also serves as a metaphor for the journey of enlightenment and the importance of questioning what we think we know. In Chapter 2 of the Republic, Plato introduces the concept of the divided line. He explains that the line is divided into 4 sections, each representing a different level of knowledge. The first section is the lowest level of knowledge, which is the level of opinion. This is the level of knowledge that is based on the senses and is subject to change. The second section is the level of understanding, which is based on reason and is more reliable than opinion. The third section is the level of reason, which is based on the use of logic and is the highest level of knowledge. The fourth section is the level of knowledge that is beyond reason and is the highest level of knowledge. Plato explains that this level of knowledge is only attainable through the use of dialectic, which is a process of questioning and reasoning. He also explains that this level of knowledge is the only way to truly understand the nature of reality. In Chapter 3, Plato discusses the nature of justice. He begins by asking what justice is and why it is important. He argues that justice is a form of excellence, and that it is important because it allows people to live in harmony with one another. He then goes on to discuss the different types of justice, including distributive justice, which is concerned with the fair distribution of resources, and corrective justice, which is concerned with punishing wrongdoers. He also discusses the role of the law in ensuring justice, and argues that the law should be based on reason and not on the whims of the rulers. Finally, he argues that justice is a virtue, and that it is essential for a just society. In Chapter 4 of the Republic, Plato discusses the 3 parts of the soul. He begins by introducing the idea of the tripartite soul, which is composed of 3 distinct parts: the rational, the spirited, and the appetitive. The rational part of the soul is the part that is concerned with knowledge and wisdom, and it is the part that is responsible for making decisions and forming opinions. The spirited part of the soul is the part that is concerned with courage and honor, and it is the part that is responsible for controlling our emotions and desires. Finally, the appetitive part of the soul is the part that is concerned with pleasure and desire, and it is the part that is responsible for our physical needs and desires. Plato then goes on to discuss the relationship between the 3 parts of the soul. He argues that the 3 parts must be in harmony in order for a person to be truly happy and fulfilled. He also argues that the rational part of the soul must be in control of the other 2 parts in order for a person to be truly virtuous. Finally, he argues that the 3 parts of the soul must be in balance in order for a person to be truly wise. In Chapter 5 of the Republic, Plato introduces the concept of the noble lie. He argues that the best way to ensure a harmonious society is to create a myth that all citizens are born from the same parents, the gods. This myth will create a sense of unity and loyalty among citizens, and will also help to prevent class divisions. Plato also argues that the myth should be used to encourage citizens to pursue their own interests, rather than those of their class. He suggests that the myth should be used to encourage citizens to pursue justice and virtue, and to discourage them from pursuing wealth and power. Finally, Plato argues that the myth should be used to encourage citizens to accept their place in society and to accept the laws of the state. In Chapter 6 of the Republic, Plato discusses the education of the guardians. He begins by discussing the importance of physical education, which should be tailored to the individual's age and physical condition. He then moves on to discuss the importance of music and poetry in the education of the guardians. He argues that music and poetry should be used to instill virtue and justice in the guardians. He then discusses the importance of mathematics and geometry in the education of the guardians, arguing that these subjects should be taught in order to develop the guardians' ability to think logically and rationally. Finally, he discusses the importance of philosophy in the education of the guardians, arguing that it should be used to teach them the truth about the world and the nature of justice. In Chapter 7 of the Republic, Plato outlines the ideal city. He begins by discussing the three classes of citizens: the producers, the auxiliaries, and the guardians. The producers are the farmers, artisans, and merchants who provide the city with its material needs. The auxiliaries are the military and police forces who protect the city from external threats. The guardians are the rulers of the city, who are responsible for its laws and justice. Plato then outlines the education of the guardians. He argues that they should be trained in the arts of war, music, and philosophy. He also argues that they should be taught to be just and to love wisdom. Plato then discusses the laws of the ideal city. He argues that the laws should be based on justice and should be designed to promote the common good. He also argues that the laws should be enforced by the guardians, who should be impartial and incorruptible. Finally, Plato discusses the structure of the ideal city. He argues that the city should be divided into three parts: the producers, the auxiliaries, and the guardians. He also argues that the city should be organized in such a way that each part is able to fulfill its role in the city. In Chapter 8, Plato discusses the ideal form of government, which he calls the philosopher-king. He argues that the ideal ruler should be a philosopher, someone who is wise and knowledgeable about the world. He should also be a king, someone who is able to lead and govern the people. Plato argues that the philosopher-king should be the sole ruler of the state, and that he should be the one to make all the decisions. He should be the one to decide what is just and what is unjust, and he should be the one to ensure that the laws of the state are followed. Plato also argues that the philosopher-king should be educated in the sciences, mathematics, and philosophy, so that he can make wise decisions. Finally, Plato argues that the philosopher-king should be a benevolent ruler, someone who is concerned with the welfare of the people and who is willing to sacrifice his own interests for the good of the state. In Chapter 9 of the Republic, Plato introduces the theory of forms. He argues that the physical world is an imperfect reflection of a perfect, eternal realm of forms. He explains that the forms are the perfect, unchanging, and eternal essences of all things, and that the physical world is merely a copy of the forms. He further argues that the forms are the source of all knowledge, and that knowledge of the forms is the only true knowledge. He also explains that the forms are the source of all beauty, and that beauty is found in the forms, not in the physical world. Finally, he argues that the forms are the source of all justice, and that justice is found in the forms, not in the physical world. Chapter 10 of the Republic by Plato is focused on the immortality of the soul. Plato argues that the soul is immortal and that it is the source of all knowledge and understanding. He believes that the soul is the only thing that can truly understand the forms, which are the perfect versions of all things. He also believes that the soul is the only thing that can truly understand the good, which is the highest form of knowledge. He argues that the soul is the only thing that can truly understand the truth and that it is the only thing that can truly understand justice. He believes that the soul is the only thing that can truly understand beauty and that it is the only thing that can truly understand love. He believes that the soul is the only thing that can truly understand the divine and that it is the only thing that can truly understand the gods. He believes that the soul is the only thing that can truly understand the universe and that it is the only thing that can truly understand the divine plan. In conclusion, Plato argues that the soul is immortal and that it is the source of all knowledge and understanding. He believes that the soul is the only thing that can truly understand the forms, the good, the truth, justice, beauty, love, the divine, the gods, the universe, and the divine plan. Outro: Plato's argument for the immortality of the soul is an important part of his philosophy and has been influential for centuries. It is a reminder that the soul is the source of all knowledge and understanding and that it is the only thing that can truly understand the divine.